have so much to talk about in such a short period of time. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your journey and what decisions you made that got you here today.
Yeah, great. So I'll start with what I do today. So I'm the CEO of a company called Seventh Generation. I think I'm talking to my people here, but if you don't know what we do, we make natural cleaning products and also really work to drive systemic change. But that's not where I started. So by way of background, I have a traditional background in CPG marketing. And through that process, learned that I loved the work, but also realized I needed to work on things that I cared about. And so it was a journey for me, but eventually landed me at Seventh Generation. So I jumped out of a big cruise ship into a tiny speedboat about 11 years ago. And the rest has been a real ride. So when I got to the company, it was really clear to me that I just loved this work. It was electrifying. I think for me to do what I love and be in service of something bigger was just, I don't know, it really worked. And so I did everything I could get my hands on, from core marketing to innovation to new categories. Eventually, I went on to run our sales team. And for me, it really just keeps me in the work, knowing that I'm doing something that I care about. Also had 3 kids along the way, so it's been a busy couple of years, but that only solidified that, doing this work is really important. So what about you, Ty?
Well, you and I both around 11 years ago jumped out of a boat into something, right? So for me, it might have been raging waters. So I founded my company CapEQ about almost 12 years ago now. And our vision is to change how the world does business. And whenever I tell people that, I get this weird combination of skepticism and confusion, especially when we first launched. And so I can tell you exactly where that optimism comes from because I still believe in my vision to this day and I know it can happen. And it all started for me at NASA. So I worked when I was in between my junior year and senior year in high school at the Summer High School Apprenticeship Research Program. And it was a STEM exposure program for women and people of color. And initially, I didn't see myself there. There was only one other woman in my whole department, one other person of color. But over time, it infected me with this belief set that impossible is nothing. I was working on the space station as like a teenager, which sounded like something from sci-fi, and my family is super nerdy. So if it's Star Wars, if it's Star Trek, the answer is yes. So it's like all these people are talking about this like it's really gonna happen. And I realized like my tribe was a group of problem solvers who could see the future and create a path to get there. And so that kind of led me to all of my decisions since. I call that the moonshot mindset, being able to create a vision and move yourself into it through a set of processes. And that led me to launch Year Up, which is a program that trains young people in technology, launch my company, work at GE when the internet was new, and it really still to this day drives a lot of my decisions.
Awesome.
Well, yes. Well, now, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
So given your role influencing Fortune 500 companies, what is the opportunity that you see right now for doing good in the world?
Well, when I started my company, I'll never forget the kind of patronizing tone I often got when people are like, "Oh, sweetheart, that's not how the world works." And it's really exciting to see how big this room is and how many people are here now because you are proving every day that that's different. What I had to learn was really to be able to shape the work that we did in terms of the business problem and the solution set. And so one of the things that's great right now is there are several market forces that are actually pushing this as the way that companies have to make decisions. There's $30 trillion of wealth changing hands between people who are used to doing it the traditional Milton Friedman way and now believe that their money should drive impact. There's consumers who are paying a premium for products that aren't just neutral, but are actively driving change in the world. And frankly, it's hard to recruit people if you're not thoughtful about purpose and it's embedded in what you do. And so when you kind of think about those market forces, I'm seeing now that a lot of the Fortune 500 companies that I work with are more receptive to this work. But I really have had to frame it as an opportunity. Yeah. What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, so interestingly for us, it's more of a responsibility. So Seventh Generation has been in business for over 34 years and was really at the pioneer of business and social responsibility. And so we're probably never going to be the biggest company, But what we see as success is influencing our industry, really driving change for good. And so a good day for us is when we're able to get, a big company to change to a better ingredient, or really driving consumer behavior change. That's a big focus for us right now. Is actually a lot of the solutions are there, but how do we get more consumers to adopt to different ways of doing their laundry or cleaning their houses, as an example? Interestingly, this has been a tough market for us. I think for any of you out there that are in the business of creating and selling products, I think it's been kind of a wild ride. And interestingly, our shift and our reframe over the last couple of years has really been around holding the line and not allowing others to take a step back. So while we see, ingredients and materials getting more expensive, even in the sustainability space, how do we make sure that those aren't sacrificed in this moment? So we really just need to keep continuing to hold the bar, and the bar changes a little bit as we go, but that's how we see our role right now.
I love your comment about making sure that you're holding the line. And, we heard from the framing earlier from the GreenBiz folks that we can't deny that's important: climate justice, social justice. But how do you keep that sense of urgency? How do you make us move faster to really solve the problems that are in front of us?
Yeah, I guess as I see it, like, we don't really have a choice. I think about like my high school soccer coach who was like, no excuses, just results. And like, I kind of think that's where we are right now, right? Like, we need to do the work. So even for a company like Seventh Generation that was really born into this business model, it's required extreme focus for us over the last couple of years to really make sure that we know exactly what we need to do right now. So I think one of our biggest initiatives over the last year has been aligning 100% of our company towards climate solutions. This means every product that we make is concentrated, high-performing concentration. We're educating our consumers around how to use concentrated products. Our advocacy is really holding the bar around climate justice and keeping fossil fuels in the ground. And our philanthropic giving is going to those frontline communities who are doing the good work towards climate and environmental justice. And so even for a company like ours that are in this space, we had to get focused right now to make sure that our impact really, really matters. And it was one thing for me as a leader to put that down on paper. I think it's been another for folks to really see it as their responsibility. So we took a lot of inspiration from Project Drawdown. I don't know if folks are familiar with them, but they talk about every job being a climate job. And that really resonated for me as I talk to my employees, because every single one of us has a responsibility right now, whether you're in marketing or supply chain or a formulator or in HR. It's your job to fight the climate emergency right now, assuming as you walk in the doors of this company. So it's been a good moment, I think. Urgency drives results, and I think it's been good to make sure that we're really using this to just get laser focused on what needs to happen. How about you?
Well, with us, one of the things, having been working in this space for a really long time now, it's that we're seeing people get really overwhelmed. Especially if they haven't been like Seventh Generation, who's been such a pioneer, they don't know where to start. They feel like, how do I fit this into my day-to-day job? And so much of my work is actually trying to figure out how to meet people where they are. So one of the reasons why I wrote The Social Impact Advantage, which is my second book, was to kind of democratize the learnings that I've seen over the last decade plus with companies who have been out of the forefront, but make it accessible so people can figure out, well, what does this mean for me? And how do I kind of apply this to my day-to-day? And I think one of the barriers that I see in terms of what's keeping us from having a sense of urgency is kind of siloing this concept of ESG and DEI. So environmental, social, and governance, a lot of times what I see from companies is it's really big on the E, and we're kind of like not talking about the S and G, right? And the reason why people are like, I don't have anything to say about that is because it's directly connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when you think about whether it's climate or other issues like transportation, clean water, workforce, so many of the inequities that we see in the world around us comes from intentionally excluding groups, as it was mentioned before. So you can't separate them. So then how do you make sure that that work is not bolted on but it's built into what you do. And what we tend to advise organizations is you have 3 levers to pull. It's how you make your money, how you spend your money, and how you invest in your people. Is your business model actively promoting things that actually drive change? Are you spending intentionally, recognizing that you have to buy this couch, you have to buy that podium? Whose communities are benefiting when you do that? And how are you looking at investing in people as not a matching game, not about, as I affectionately call, butts and seats, but really about making sure that there are people in positions of decision-making authority that can help drive the changes we want to see. And the reason why that's so important is there are people every day who are being excluded from decision-making authorities who are living what it's like to live in communities, who have been pillaged from not having folks who be really intentional about climate, who are living in communities who don't have access to water. And so we're leaving not just talent, but innovation on the table where we're not really intentional about marrying those two things.
Awesome. So in our last 2 minutes.
Oh, this went by so fast.
What? Okay, this work is hard. We know it.
Yes.
But what gives you hope right now? What keeps you going and getting this job done?
Well, it sounds cheesy, but it's people who are in the room. You know, you had mentioned in the beginning, I think this is my people. I think you're my people, right? And the reason why that's important is to do this work, we have to change the way the world does business, but you need people around you who have that moonshot mindset and who are working every day to come up with solutions. And one of the things that stuck with me from my work at NASA was we had never put anything in space, like a space station before. We didn't have the right answer, but we had the right set of processes to get there. And I think the reason why a room like this is inspiring, especially when Dylan was like, well, who was here in 2009, is that group of people is growing, and everywhere around you are iterating about the solutions that we can come up that will be the problem solver of tomorrow. What about you?
Well, for me, the small things matter. So I'll tell you guys a quick story. The other night I was collecting a bunch of recyclables to throw out in the bin, and my 6-year-old was like, wait, Mom, stop. That's smaller than the head of a squirrel. And I was like, what? I was like, what a weird reference. And also, like, you're right. This is too small to be recycled. And I was like, where did you learn that? Because, like, I definitely did not teach you that. And he said, at school. And I thought, how awesome is this? Like, this generation, these kids, like, they're learning how to save the world. But it's our responsibility to help them get there, right? Like, how can we make sure that there's a livable planet for these kids to really transform? So it was a small moment for me that goes a long way, just to really help reground in what we're doing here. Well, thank you for this conversation, Ty. This is awesome.
This is awesome. And thank all of you.